December 14th, 2010, 3:46 a.m., the Bellagio Casino spreads across 11 acres of polished marble, crystal chandeliers, and quiet desperation. Outside, the famous fountains dance in choreographed patterns set to Andrea Bocelli. Inside, 5,000 slot machines chime in mechanical symphony. The high-limit room glows under soft lighting that makes everyone look both wealthy and tired. At the craps table near the north entrance, 8 players cluster around green felt, cheering and groaning as dice tumble across the surface. Chips stack in colorful towers. Black's worth $100, purple's worth $500, yellow's worth $1,000. And cranberries, the rare $25,000 chips that most people never see, reserved for whales and celebrities and people who've stopped counting money in practical terms. Security cameras mounted in black domes watch everything. 200 cameras throughout the casino, feeding into a control room where specialists monitor 40 screens simultaneously, trained to spot card counters, chip thieves, drunk idiots, and anyone who looks wrong. The clock reads 3:46 a.m., that dead hour when only serious gamblers and desperate ones remain. Then the glass doors open. A man walks in wearing a black motorcycle helmet with the visor down, black leather jacket, black gloves, jeans, and boots. He moves with purpose but not panic, heading directly toward the high-limit craps table where $300,000 in chips sit exposed on the felt. For 3 seconds, nobody reacts. Las Vegas is weird. People wear costumes, cowboys' hats, showgirl feathers. A motorcycle helmet isn't that unusual. Then he reaches into his jacket and pulls out a gun. Not a movie prop, not a joke. A real .45 caliber pistol that looks enormous under the chandelier lights. "Nobody moving," he says, his voice muffled by the helmet but clear enough to understand. "This'll be over in a minute." The dealers freeze. The players step back, hands raised. One woman drops her drink, a vodka tonic that shatters across marble. Ice cubes skittering. The man sweeps handfuls of chips into a black backpack, cranberries, yellows, purples, blacks, moving with practiced efficiency, like someone who's thought about this moment many times. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 1 minute. He zips the backpack, slings it over his shoulder, and backs toward the entrance. Gun still raised but not pointed at anyone specifically. "Thank you for your cooperation," he says, almost polite. Then he turns and walks out through the same glass doors he entered, past the fountains that continue dancing to recorded music, past valets who don't realize what just happened, toward a Suzuki GSX-R motorcycle parked near the North Valet stand. He straddles the bike, starts the engine, and accelerates onto Las Vegas Boulevard. 3 minutes and 12 seconds from entrance to escape. No mask removed, no face visible, no fingerprints, no shouting, no violence. By the time security reaches the doors, he's already disappearing into traffic, just another motorcyclist on the strip at 4 a.m., swallowed by neon and distance. Inside the Bellagio, alarms finally start wailing. The dealers stare at the empty felt where $300,000 in chips used to be. A security supervisor grabs his radio. "We have a 211 in progress. Armed robbery, high-limit pit. Suspect fled on motorcycle heading south on the strip. White male, approximately 6 feet, black helmet, armed with a handgun." Within minutes, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police converge on the Bellagio. Within an hour, FBI agents arrive. Within 3 hours, the story hits national news. Man in motorcycle helmet robs Bellagio Casino. And the entire city asks the same question. Who robs the most surveilled casino in the world and then vanishes like smoke? Before we dive into the story of the gambler who couldn't stop playing even after pulling off the perfect heist, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and hit that hype button to share this with other true crime fans. This is the story of the Bellagio Bandit. His full name was Anthony Michael Carleo, though most people at the casinos just called him Tony. 29 years old in December 2010. Thin build, dark hair usually uncombed, nervous energy that made him talk fast and move faster. He had the kind of face that people forgot immediately after meeting him. Not ugly, not handsome, just unremarkable in that specific Las Vegas way where everyone blends together under casino lights. But here's what made Tony different from 10,000 other Vegas gamblers. His father was Judge George Assad Carleo, a respected Las Vegas municipal court judge who'd served on the bench for over a decade. Tony grew up with every advantage, said Detective Marcus Hayes, who would later lead the investigation into the Bellagio robbery. Private schools, college fund, connections all over the city. His dad had a reputation for being tough but fair. And Tony was supposed to be the success story, the judge's son who makes good. Instead, Tony became the judge's son, who couldn't stop disappointing everyone, starting with himself. He'd attended the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, enrolled in the pre-pharmacy program, with plans to become a pharmacist like his uncle. For 2 years, he attended classes irregularly, earned mediocre grades, and spent more time at the poker tables than the library. I had him in organic chemistry, said Professor David Chen, now retired. Smart kid when he showed up, which wasn't often. He'd miss 3 weeks, then ace an exam, then disappear again. I pulled him aside once and asked if everything was okay. He said, yeah, just busy. But you could see something was off, like he was already somewhere else in his head. Tony dropped out in his junior year. No dramatic event, no failing grades. He just stopped showing up and never re-enrolled. His father was devastated. George loved that boy, said Patricia Okafor, a longtime friend of the Carleo family. But he didn't know how to reach him. George was old school. You work hard, you follow rules, you build a life. Tony was lost. George would talk about him at dinner parties, trying to sound proud, but you could hear the worry underneath. Tony's figuring things out, he'd say. But year after year, Tony kept figuring things out without finding any answers. After dropping out, Tony drifted through a series of dead-end jobs. He worked as a valet at the Mirage for 6 months, parking Ferraris and Bentleys belonging to people who'd never worry about rent. He dealt cards at a small off-strip casino called Jerry's Nugget for 8 weeks before getting fired for showing up late too many times. He tried construction, telemarketing, even a brief stint delivering pizzas. Nothing stuck. What did stick was gambling. Tony was a regular at the Bellagio poker room by 2008, said Michael Torres, a professional poker player who encountered Carleo dozens of times. He'd play no-limit hold'em, usually at the lower stakes tables, 5-10, sometimes 10-20. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good either. He had this aggressive style that worked sometimes, but mostly just bled chips. And he never knew when to quit. He'd be up 2,000, and you'd think he'd walk away. But no, he'd keep playing until he was down 5. The staff at the Bellagio knew him. Dealers recognized him. Floor managers nodded when he walked by. Security had his face in their database, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because they tracked regular players, especially ones who played for hours and tipped the cocktail waitresses too much. Tony from the pit, they called him, just another regular in a city full of regulars. But beneath the surface, Tony was spiraling. He'd started using painkillers after a minor car accident in 2009. Vicodin prescribed for back pain that became something he needed just to feel normal. Then Percocet, then OxyContin when he could afford it, which wasn't often. I saw him at a gas station one morning, said Rebecca Martinez, a former classmate from UNLV. This was maybe 6 months before the robbery. He looked terrible, skinny, pale, eyes unfocused. I said hi and he barely recognized me. Started talking really fast about some business opportunity, some poker tournament he was going to crush. I gave him my number and told him to call if he needed anything. He never called. By late 2010, Tony was broke. He owed money to friends, former roommates, a couple of small-time bookies who were getting impatient. He'd been evicted from his apartment near UNLV and was crashing on a friend's couch in a complex off Tropicana Avenue, a depressing place with stained carpets and neighbors who fought loudly at 3 a.m. His father had offered help multiple times, money for rehab, connections for job interviews, even just a place to live. But Tony couldn't accept it. Every offer felt like a reminder of his failure. Every conversation with his father ended with the same unspoken question hanging in the air. When are you going to get your life together? I think Tony felt invisible, Detective Hayes said later. Here's a guy from a prominent family, educated, had opportunities most people dream about, and he'd turned himself into nobody. He gambled to feel alive, but he kept losing. He took pills to stop feeling bad, but they made everything worse. He was stuck in this loop where every decision led to a worse outcome. In early December 2010, Tony lost his last $30,000 in a single weekend at the Bellagio. $30,000 he'd borrowed from a high-interest lender, promising to pay it back within a month. He'd gone to the casino on Friday night with a plan. Play disciplined poker, grind out small wins, turn 30,000 into 40 or 50 over a few weeks. Instead, he played recklessly, chased bad beats, went on tilt after losing a big pot. By Sunday morning, he was broke again, staring at a debt he couldn't possibly repay and creditors who wouldn't wait much longer. He sat in his borrowed apartment, really just a corner of a friend's living room with a sleeping bag and a duffel bag of clothes, surrounded by unpaid bills, empty prescription bottles, and the crushing weight of his own bad decisions. And that's when the idea came to him. Not slowly, not as a plan that developed over time. It hit him all at once, fully formed, like a revelation. If the house always wins, then I'll become the house. The idea should have seemed insane. Rob the Bellagio, one of the most secured, surveilled, and protected buildings in North America. A casino that had been studied by security experts worldwide as the gold standard for loss prevention. A place where armed guards, facial recognition software, and 200 cameras made theft seem mathematically impossible. But to Tony Carleo, sitting in that borrowed apartment at 4 a.m. with his last $23 in his wallet, the idea made perfect sense. I wasn't thinking rationally, Tony later admitted during his confession. I was desperate, high, and exhausted. And in that moment, robbing the casino felt less crazy than trying to live the way I was living. He started planning the next day, not with blueprints or elaborate schemes. Tony wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was just a desperate gambler who'd spent hundreds of hours inside the Bellagio and noticed things that other people missed. He knew the layout intimately. The north entrance near the poker room, less traffic than the main entrance. The high-limit pit where chips stacked on tables without the heavy security presence of the cage. The shift changes that happened at 4 a.m., creating brief moments of reduced attention. He knew that security focused on cheaters and card counters, not armed robbery, because armed robbery almost never happened inside major casinos. Why would it? The money was locked up, the exits were monitored, and every second was recorded from multiple angles. But chips weren't money, not technically. They were tokens that represented money, sitting exposed on tables, easy to grab if you move fast enough. Tony understood something most people don't, Detective Hayes explained. Casino security is designed to catch subtle cheating, not bold theft. They're watching for the guy marking cards or signaling a confederate. They're not expecting someone to walk in with a gun, grab chips, and run. It's too simple, too brazen. That's what made it work. For a week, Tony studied the Bellagio like a final exam he couldn't afford to fail. He went to the casino every night, sitting at low-stakes tables, watching. He timed the security patrols. He counted cameras. He noticed which dealers were attentive and which ones were just going through the motions at 4 a.m. He observed the chip runners, casino employees who transported high-denomination chips between tables in the cage. He saw how casual they were, how little protection they had, and he found the weakness. Between 3:30 and 4 a.m., during the shift change, there was a narrow window where the high-limit pit was staffed but not heavily watched. Players were scarce. Security was focused on dealers clocking out and new staff clocking in. 15 to 20 minutes when the casino was at its most vulnerable. Tony bought the equipment he needed with money borrowed from a friend who thought Tony was buying motorcycle gear for a road trip. A black motorcycle helmet with a dark visor, bought at a pawn shop for $60, no questions asked. Black leather gloves, purchased at a Walmart, paid cash. A .45 caliber pistol, not bought but borrowed from a guy Tony played poker with, told him he wanted it for home protection and would return it in a week. The motorcycle was already his, a 2004 Suzuki GSX-R that he'd bought years earlier when things were better, one of the few possessions he hadn't sold yet. Looking back, the preparation was minimal, Hayes said. No reconnaissance team, no getaway driver, no sophisticated plan, just a helmet, a gun, and a route he'd driven 100 times. That's either genius-level confidence or suicidal desperation. With Tony, it was probably both. On December 13th, Tony sat in his friend's apartment and wrote what he thought might be his last words. A note on notebook paper, shaky handwriting, addressed to his father. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. I know I disappointed you. I tried to be better, but I kept failing. Maybe this is the only way I know how to win. If this works, I'll finally have control. If it doesn't, at least I tried something. I love you. Anthony. He folded the note, put it in his wallet, and never sent it. The next morning, technically early morning on December 14th, Tony showered, dressed in dark clothes, and loaded his backpack with nothing except some zip ties he'd bought at a hardware store, thinking he might need to restrain someone. He didn't eat. Couldn't. His stomach was churning with adrenaline and prescription painkillers and the terrifying certainty that in a few hours his life would either completely change or completely end. At 2:30 a.m., he started his motorcycle and rode toward the Strip. Las Vegas at night is a different city, quieter than people expect. The spaces between casinos, dark and empty. The neon less magical and more desperate when you're alone. Tony rode slowly, deliberately, breathing through his nervousness. He parked near the Bellagio's north entrance at 3:38 a.m., tucked between two cars in a valet area where motorcycles were common enough not to attract attention. He sat on the bike for 5 minutes, watching the entrance, watching people come and go, watching security guards who looked bored and tired. His hands were shaking. He forced himself to breathe slowly. "This is it," he said aloud to himself, voice muffled inside the helmet. "This is the only way out." At 3:46 a.m., Anthony Carleo walked through the glass doors of the Bellagio Casino carrying a gun and a backpack, about to commit the crime that would make him famous. The casino floor at 3:46 a.m. is a strange place. Most tourists have either gone to bed or moved to the nightclubs. What remains are the serious gamblers, the insomniacs, the people who've lost track of time or never cared about it in the first place. The energy is different, quieter, more focused, less joy and more compulsion. At the high-limit craps table, 8 people are playing. A middle-aged couple from California celebrating their anniversary with a $5,000 gambling budget. 2 businessmen in expensive suits who smell like scotch. A young tech executive from San Francisco who's up $40,000 and feeling invincible. 3 local regulars who play here 3 nights a week and know all the dealers by name. The dealer, a woman named Sandra Chen who's worked at the Bellagio for 11 years, is managing the table with practiced efficiency. She's tired, 4 hours into an 8-hour shift, but professional. She barely notices when the man in the motorcycle helmet walks through the entrance. Neither does the pit boss, a man named Robert Kellerman, who's checking something on his tablet, probably reviewing player comp data. For 3 crucial seconds, nobody reacts because nobody processes what they're seeing. Then Anthony Carleo pulls the gun from inside his jacket. "Nobody move," he says, his voice calm but firm, like someone who's rehearsed the line. "This'll be over in a minute." Sandra freezes, hands raised slightly. The players step back from the table, eyes wide. One of the businessmen starts to reach for his phone, then stops when Carleo shifts the gun in his direction. "Don't," Carleo says. "Just stay still and nobody gets hurt." The pit boss, Kellerman, is 6 feet away with his back turned. He spins around at the commotion and sees the gun pointed vaguely in his direction. "Oh, Jesus," he whispers. Carleo starts sweeping chips from the craps table into his backpack. Not frantically, methodically. He knows which chips matter. The cranberries, those beautiful $25,000 chips that gleam under the lights. A handful of yellows worth 1,000 each. Some purples, some blacks. 30 seconds. 45 seconds. "Are you seriously robbing us right now?" one of the businessmen asks, his voice pitched between terror and disbelief. "I'm seriously robbing the casino," Carleo replies, still loading chips. "Not you. You'll all get your money back from insurance." "You won't get away with this," the tech executive says, trying to sound brave. Carleo pauses, looks at him through the dark visor. "Maybe, maybe not, but I'm going to try." 1 minute, 90 seconds. The backpack is heavy now, loaded with approximately $300,000 in chips, roughly 70% of what was on the table. Carleo zips it closed, slings it over his shoulder, and backs toward the entrance. Gun still raised but not threatening anyone specifically. "Thank you for your cooperation," he says, almost polite, like he's finishing a business transaction. Have a good night. Then he turns and walks, not runs, walks, toward the glass doors. Sandra Chen hits the silent alarm button under the table. Kellerman grabs his radio. We have a 211 in progress. High-limit pit, armed suspect. But Carleo is already outside, moving past the fountains that continue their choreographed dance like nothing has happened. Past confused valets who see the gun and instinctively step back, toward his motorcycle parked 20 yards away. He straddles the bike, kicks it to life, and accelerates. The entire robbery took 3 minutes and 12 seconds from entrance to escape. By the time Bellagio security guards reach the entrance, weapons drawn, Anthony Carleo is already on Las Vegas Boulevard heading south. Just another motorcyclist in traffic, anonymous behind his black helmet, carrying enough stolen chips to change his life forever. If only he'd known how to stop. By sunrise, the story is everywhere. Bellagio bandit strikes, man in motorcycle helmet, robs casino for $1.5 million. The number gets inflated in media reports, not 300,000, but 1.5 million, because that sounds better, more dramatic, more worth talking about. Local news runs the security footage on loop, the man in the black helmet walking in, the gun visible, the smooth collection of chips, the calm exit. Twitter explodes. Reddit threads multiply. People call it the most Vegas crime ever. Brazen, cinematic, perfectly executed. TMZ runs a story wondering if it's a publicity stunt. Amateur sleuths try to identify the motorcycle. Conspiracy theorists suggest it's an inside job. Anthony Carleo watches it all from a cheap motel room off Boulder Highway, a place called the Desert Rose Inn that charges $49 a night and doesn't ask questions about guests who pay cash. He sits on a sagging bed covered with chips. Cranberries, dozens of them, each representing $25,000. They're beautiful in a way he'd never appreciated before. Ceramic discs with intricate designs, the Bellagio logo embossed, serial numbers etched on the edges. He counts them 3 times, spreading them across the bed in neat stacks like a dragon hoarding treasure. $312,000. He did it. He actually did it. For the first time in years, Anthony Carleo feels powerful, in control, like he's finally won against the house that had beaten him down for so long. But there's a problem, a fatal flaw he hadn't fully considered during his week of desperate planning. The chips are serialized. Each cranberry has a unique identification number. The Bellagio has records of every high-denomination chip in circulation, and they've immediately flagged the stolen ones in their system. They've also notified every major casino in Nevada. If anyone tries to cash these specific chips, security will be alerted immediately. Carleo can't just walk into a cage and exchange them for money. He'd be arrested on the spot. That's the thing about casino heists, Detective Hayes explained. Stealing chips is relatively easy compared to stealing cash. But chips are worthless unless you can convert them. They're essentially marked evidence that connects you directly to the crime. Smart thieves know this and avoid chips entirely. But Tony wasn't a smart thief. He was a desperate gambler. So Carleo develops a strategy. He'll gamble the chips back into play. He'll go to different casinos, not the Bellagio, but places around town, and use the stolen cranberries to buy into high-stakes games. He'll play for a while, deliberately lose some, win some, and then cash out smaller amounts that won't trigger immediate alarms. It's called washing the chips, and it's risky but potentially viable. The first night, he goes to the Wynn, a casino 2 properties away from the Bellagio. He sits at a high-limit blackjack table, pulls out 5 cranberries, $125,000, and buys in. The dealer accepts them without question. The pit boss notes it in the system but doesn't raise concerns. High-value chips move between casinos occasionally when whales play at multiple properties. Carleo plays for 2 hours. He's up, then down, then up again. His hands shake slightly, but he forces himself to look calm. When he cashes out, he's converted 5 cranberries into $87,000 in checks and smaller chips from the Wynn. It works. Over the next 3 weeks, Carleo washes more chips at different casinos: Caesars, the Venetian, MGM Grand, Mandalay Bay. Never more than 2 cranberries per session, always playing long enough to make it look legitimate. He starts spending money, New clothes, a better hotel, expensive dinners. He pays off some debts, though not enough to draw attention. He buys painkillers from his regular dealer, enough to last months. But something strange happens. Instead of being satisfied, instead of being careful, Anthony Carleo becomes obsessed. He starts returning to the Bellagio, not to rob it again, just to be there, to walk through the same doors he'd walked through with a gun, to sit at tables near the scene of his crime, to feel the thrill of being unrecognized, anonymous, the Bellagio bandit hiding in plain sight. It wasn't about money anymore, Hayes said. It was about the high, the feeling of power. Tony had spent years being invisible, being a disappointment, being nobody. For 3 minutes, he'd been somebody, and he couldn't let that go. He starts taking risks. He shows the cranberry chips to friends, bragging vaguely about a big score. He posts on underground poker forums under fake names, testing the waters, seeing if anyone wants to buy high-denomination chips at a discount. I got lucky at a private game, he writes. Have some cranberries I need to move. Serious buyers only. The FBI is watching those forums. Special Agent James Norton, assigned to the Bellagio Robbery Task Force, sees the posts and creates a fake identity, a high-stakes gambler from Los Angeles looking to buy chips at 80 cents on the dollar. He messages Carleo's account. Interested in your cranberries. Can meet in Vegas this week. Cash ready. Carleo replies within an hour. Let's talk. They arrange to meet at a Starbucks off the Strip on January 12, 2011, exactly 29 days after the robbery. Anthony Carleo arrives first, parking his motorcycle in the lot, taking off his helmet slowly. He's wearing sunglasses despite the overcast January weather. A baseball cap pulled low, trying to look casual, but his body language screams nervousness. He keeps touching his jacket pocket where 3 cranberry chips sit in a small velvet pouch, ready to show his samples. He orders a venti coffee, extra shot of espresso because he barely slept last night, his mind racing with possibilities. $400,000. That's what the sale represents. Enough to disappear. Maybe go to Mexico, somewhere cheap where 400 grand stretches for years. Or maybe just pay off every debt, get clean, start fresh in a different city where nobody knows him as Tony from the pit, or the judge's failure of a son. He sits at an outside table, leg bouncing nervously, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Agent James Norton arrives 5 minutes late. Calculated lateness makes him seem casual, not desperate. He's dressed like a successful businessman in his late 30s, expensive Rolex on his wrist, tailored charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes. The kind of guy who might legitimately buy stolen chips to use at private games where nobody asks uncomfortable questions. He's wearing a wire. So are 3 other agents positioned around the Starbucks, dressed as customers, baristas, people reading newspapers. Anthony, Norton says, extending his hand with a confident smile. Carleo stands, shakes it. His palm is sweaty. You can call me Tony. You're Mike, right? That's me. Norton sits down across from him, pulls out his phone and makes a show of ordering another coffee through the app, establishing that he's comfortable, unhurried. Thanks for meeting. Traffic on the 15 was brutal. No problem, Tony says. He's trying to match Norton's casual energy, but can't quite pull it off. His knee keeps bouncing under the table. So, Norton leans forward slightly, lowering his voice. You've got some cranberries? Bellagio cranberries, Tony says, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. The real deal. 25K chips. I can do 20 of them. 500 grand in casino value. I'm asking 400. That's 80 cents on the dollar, which is the best rate you'll find anywhere. Norton nods slowly, impressed. That's a good rate. Where'd you get them? Tony grins, and there's something in that grin that breaks Detective Hayes' heart when he watches the footage later. It's the grin of someone who thinks they're finally winning, who thinks they're in control, who has no idea they're seconds away from disaster. Let's just say I got lucky at the right place, right time, Tony says. Got lucky, Norton repeats, his tone neutral. That's one way to put it. Look, you want them or not? Tony's getting defensive now, a flash of the addict's paranoia showing through. I've got other buyers interested. I came to you first because you seem serious. I am serious, Norton assures him. 400 grand in cash, serious. But I need to know these are clean. Not going to bring heat down on me. Clean as they get, Tony insists. You know how it works. You take them to different casinos, wash them through a few sessions, mix them with your own action. Nobody asks questions if you're playing for real. I've already washed some myself. No problems. Norton raises an eyebrow. You've been using these at casinos? A few, small amounts, testing the waters. Tony realizes too late he's said too much, given details that connect him to the robbery. Point is, they work. They're legit Bellagio chips, and you can cash them anywhere if you're smart about it. Can I see one? Tony glances around the Starbucks, checking for surveillance cameras, for anyone watching. He doesn't notice the woman in yoga clothes at the next table, or the man reading the Wall Street Journal near the entrance, or the barista who keeps glancing their direction. All of them are FBI. He pulls out the small velvet pouch, opens it under the table, and shows Norton a single cranberry chip. Norton picks it up, holds it up to the light, examines the serial number, V782, and commits it to memory. The chip is beautiful, really. Intricate design, perfect weight, the Bellagio logo embossed in gold. Looks legit. Bellagio, Tony says, pride creeping into his voice. Best place in town. Most secure casino in the world, they say. He smirks. Guess not secure enough. Norton smiles, and it's the smile of someone who just got a full confession on tape. I guess not. Okay, I'm interested. But I want to see all 20 before I commit. I'm not buying sight unseen. Can we meet tomorrow? Same time? I'll bring the cash. Tomorrow works, Tony says, already counting the money in his head, already planning his escape. Same place, same time. But bring the full 400. I'm not negotiating down. Fair enough. They shake hands again. Norton's grip is firm, professional. Tony's is slightly trembling. They part ways. Tony climbs on his motorcycle, feeling like he's finally about to escape. One more day, one more meeting, then freedom. He doesn't see Norton pull his phone as soon as Carleo turns the corner. It's definitely him, Norton tells Detective Hayes. He just showed me one of the stolen chips. Serial number V7832 matches our list. He admitted to washing chips at other casinos. He referenced the Bellagio security. Everything we need. He's bringing all 20 chips tomorrow. We'll be ready, Hayes replies. Get the arrest warrant finalized. Tomorrow we end this. That night, Tony Carleo sleeps better than he has in weeks, dreaming of Mexico, of beaches, of a life where he's finally won. The next morning, January 13th, 2011, he wakes up early. He showers, shaves, puts on clean clothes, dark jeans, black jacket, the outfit of someone about to become invisible and disappear forever. He packs all his remaining cranberry chips into his backpack, 18 of them representing $450,000 in casino value. He'd gambled away or cashed 2 of them already, but 18 is still enough. 400 grand in cash minus the 2 he'd already used equals enough money to vanish completely. He looks at himself in the bathroom mirror of his cheap motel room. This is it, he tells his reflection. Last gamble. Don't fuck it up. He arrives at the Starbucks at 1:55 p.m., 5 minutes early, wanting to scout the area. Nothing seems unusual. Same customers, same vibe. He orders coffee. His hands are shaking slightly, so he wraps both hands around the cup to steady them. Agent Norton arrives at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a briefcase, allegedly containing $400,000 in cash, actually containing arrest documentation and tracking equipment. Got the chips? Norton asks, sitting down with an easy smile. Got the money? Tony counters, trying to sound confident. In my car. Didn't want to walk through a parking lot with 400 grand in a briefcase, but I want to see them first. All of them. Then we'll walk to my car and make the trade. Tony hesitates. This is the moment where instinct should kick in, where something should feel wrong, where he should walk away. But he's so close to finally winning. He unzips the backpack slightly, tilts it so Norton can see inside. 18 perfect cranberry chips stacked in neat rows, each one representing $25,000 in casino money, each one connecting him to the robbery. Norton nods appreciatively. Beautiful. Exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go to my car. They stand. Tony slings the backpack over his shoulder. His heart is pounding, but he tells himself it's excitement, not fear. They walk through the Starbucks patio toward the parking lot. 10 steps, 20 steps. As soon as they are away from civilian witnesses, 6 FBI agents and 4 Las Vegas Metro police officers emerge from unmarked vehicles, weapons drawn, surrounding them in a coordinated formation that's been practiced a dozen times. FBI, hands in the air, don't move! Tony freezes. Time seems to slow down. The backpack slips from his hand, lands on asphalt with a soft thump. 18 cranberry chips inside, $450,000 in evidence. Anthony Michael Carleo, you're under arrest for armed robbery, possession of stolen property, and interstate transportation of stolen goods. You have the right to remain silent. The words wash over him. He doesn't resist, doesn't run, doesn't even look surprised. He just stands there, hands raised, watching everything he'd planned dissolve like a mirage. Detective Hayes approaches as they cuff him. Did you really think you'd get away with this? Tony looks at him with tired eyes. I knew I wouldn't. Not forever. I just thought I'd get a little more time. Time for what? To feel like I'd won something, Tony says quietly. Just once. To feel like I beat the house. They put him in the back of an unmarked car. Through the window, he watches them photograph his backpack, catalog the chips, document the evidence that will send him to prison. As they drive toward the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for booking and interrogation, Tony leans his head against the window and laughs, a short, bitter sound. What's funny? The agent driving asks. I'm my father's son after all, Tony says. He makes judgments. I got judged. Turns out we're both in the same business. When Anthony Carleo's mugshot hits the news, Las Vegas collectively gasps. The Bellagio Bandit, the man who'd pulled off one of the most brazen casino heists in modern history, wasn't some criminal mastermind or professional thief. He was Tony from the pit, the judge's son, the dropout who everyone had watched spiral but nobody had saved. I couldn't believe it, said Sandra Chen, the dealer from the craps table. I'd seen Tony dozens of times before the robbery. I'd dealt cards to him. He was just another player. And then I saw his face on TV and realized the man in the helmet had been someone I knew. It was surreal. The media frenzy was immediate and intense. Every news outlet in Nevada covered the story. National networks sent reporters. The New York Times ran a feature titled, The Gambler Who Couldn't Stop Playing. In his jail cell, awaiting trial, Tony gave one interview to a local reporter. Why did you do it? The reporter asked. Because I was broke, desperate, and out of options, Tony said. His face was thinner than in the mugshot, his eyes tired. I'd tried everything else. Working didn't work. Gambling didn't work. Being my father's son didn't work. So I figured, why not try being a criminal? At least for 3 minutes I'd feel like I had power. Do you regret it? Tony thought for a long moment. I regret getting caught. I regret hurting my father. I regret that I couldn't just stop after I had the money. But do I regret walking into that casino with a gun? Honestly, not really. For the first time in years, I felt alive. The trial was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, the stolen chips. Tony's confession, testimony from witnesses and the undercover agent. His public defender argued diminished capacity due to drug addiction, but the prosecution countered that the robbery was too carefully planned to claim impairment. The most painful part wasn't the legal proceedings. It was watching his father sit in the courtroom every single day. Judge George Carleo attended every hearing in silence, wearing a dark suit, sitting in the back row, watching his son being prosecuted for a crime that had embarrassed the entire family. I saw Judge Carleo in the hallway during a recess, said Patricia Okafor, the family friend. He looked 10 years older. I asked him how he was holding up. He just said, I failed him. I gave him everything except what he needed. I didn't know what to say to that. On March 17, 2011, Anthony Carleo was sentenced. The judge, not his father, but a different judge who'd been assigned the case, read the sentence. For the crime of armed robbery, I sentence you to 9 to 27 years in Nevada State Prison. You will be eligible for parole after 9 years. Tony stood, hands cuffed, expressionless. Do you have anything to say? The judge asked. Tony looked at his father in the back of the courtroom. I'm sorry, Dad. Judge Carleo didn't respond, just closed his eyes. As they led Tony away, he said to the bailiff, "I called it the ultimate gamble. I guess the house won after all." Anthony Carleo served his sentence at Lovelock Correctional Center, a medium-security prison in rural Nevada. Behind bars, he got clean from painkillers, earned his GED, and took courses in addiction counseling. He gave interviews to journalists studying the psychology of casino crimes. It wasn't about money, he told a documentary filmmaker in 2014. Money was just the scoreboard. It was about feeling like I mattered, like I'd done something people would remember. I spent my whole life being invisible, being the judge's disappointing son, being just another losing gambler. For 3 minutes, I was somebody, the Bellagio Bandit, the guy who beat the house. That feeling was worth more than the chips. He was released on parole in September 2020 after serving 9 years. Now 40 years old, he moved to a small town outside Reno, works at a construction company, and attends Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice a week. "I haven't been inside a casino in 9 years," he said in a rare interview after his release. "I don't miss it. The lights, the sounds, the false hope. I see it all clearly now. I was addicted to the high, not the money. And the ultimate high was becoming the Bellagio Bandit, which is exactly what destroyed me." His father, Judge George Carleo, retired from the bench in 2013. They speak occasionally, but their relationship remains strained by the weight of disappointment and regret. The Bellagio recovered all but $60,000 worth of chips. Some were cashed by Carleo before his arrest, laundered so thoroughly they couldn't be traced. The casino upgraded its security protocols, added more cameras, and trained staff to respond faster to armed threats. The story became legend in Las Vegas, a cautionary tale about addiction, desperation, and the illusion of control that gambling creates. Tony Carleo represents something tragic, Detective Hayes reflected. He had advantages most people dream about: education, family support, opportunities. But he threw it all away chasing the high of gambling. And when gambling stopped working, he gambled with his life. He walked into the Bellagio with a gun thinking he'd finally beat the house. But the house always wins. It just takes longer sometimes.